Thanks for tuning in this week to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. There's a lot of things going on in fields right now. One of them is the application of soil amendments like lime. We'll talk about using lime in the traditional sense for low pH soils. We'll also talk about it in some unconventional situations.
We're also going to discuss wheat pre-emerge herbicides. Maybe you've already seeded your wheat, maybe not, but the whole thing is you've got to have great weed control if you want high yields. We'll talk about that today.
Our Weed of the Week has generated a lot of discussion this year. We'll talk about what control methods may work on your farm, but first, here's our Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
If you're new to watching Ag PhD, each week we have our Farm Basics segment. We started doing this almost 20 years ago because there are so many non-farmers out there in the country. In fact, if you look at how many farmers are farming 1,000 acres or more, it's only about 173,000. That's it. That's less than 0.05% of our population. It's a tiny, tiny amount. So there are a lot of non-farmers out there, and we just want to make sure that we're conveying some of the common things we do on the farm to non-farmers so they can understand just a little bit about what's going on. So today on the show, we wanted to discuss winter annual weeds. It's a weed type that is definitely a little bit more difficult to control in certain crops, and we want to explain why today.
You may have noticed at home in your lawn or your garden or in your neighborhood that there are certain weeds that really seem to thrive in the fall weather. Well, oftentimes those are winter annual weeds. They're weeds that germinate and get their start in the fall, and then they go dormant over the winter, and then in the spring they're ready to roll again. They're almost like perennial weeds in that they've got an established root system, they have some top growth already, and they take off much quicker than the seeds that you're going to put in the ground in the spring. So if you've got a spring annual weed, it's often at a big disadvantage to those winter annuals. So you think about, where would those winter annuals be a real problem for me? Well, if you're doing no tillage at all. So farmers that do tillage in the spring, if there's winter annual weeds, well, they till them right up and get rid of them. But if they're not doing tillage, those winter annuals have got a substantial root base, and they're going to be tough for that farmer to fight.
The other place where we see big problems with winter annual weeds is in winter crops. Winter wheat, for example, we seed that on our own farm, and every year we have to face certain weeds like pennycress, for example, and there are a number of other winter annual weeds that they get started about the same time the winter wheat does. And pretty often in the fall we think, oh, no big deal, you know, a lot of these weeds will die off in the spring if there are a few weeds. But sure enough, each spring we see a lot of those winter annuals that did survive the winter, and like Darren said earlier, they thrive, they're big early on, and so if you're going to spray them in the spring, it often gets problematic because the weeds are so tall and a lot of the herbicides only control 2 to 4 inch tall weeds.
So that's why right now you may see farmers in your area out trying to control weeds, and you think, why are they doing that now? Especially in the upper Midwest. We've got frost right around the corner, and winter, well, if any weed survives until we get to that, it's going to be dead. But you are mistaken if you're talking about winter annual weeds or looking at winter annual weeds, because they can handle that frost, they can handle the winter, and still thrive next spring.
So fortunately, on a lot of our farm, we don't have a tremendous problem with winter annual weeds, but certainly it has been more of an issue for us in no-till and strip-till, like Darren had said a little bit earlier. And since a lot of farmers across the country have reduced tillage, we are seeing more winter annual weeds popping up. So it's just one of the things that farmers have to deal with a little bit differently, and even doing a lot of spraying in the fall as opposed to in the spring to get these weeds under control permanently.
One weed that you may see out in fields right now is our Weed of the Week. Is this a winter annual, and what herbicides will control it? We'll talk about it later in the show.
The main goal of harvest today is to get what you harvest. With the RPR system, you can have no rotor loss.
customer satisfaction that we're getting for every single one we sold is just impeccable. Being able to use one set of concaves, there's nothing else on the market that compares to it.
So far, looking behind the machine, I'm thoroughly impressed with them. I'd definitely recommend them to another farmer.
The major thing was stopping rotor laws, and we've already done that. Getting companies to help me is my big thing right now. The thing works, and we're very happy with what we've been doing.
Tired of that old warped poly boom ruining your spray applications? Express Boom from Hypro is a fully assembled stainless steel boom that ensures an even application of chemicals every time. Don't wait another season, upgrade today. Hypro, helping you spray better.
In today's market, growers deserve products that bring true, measurable value to their farm. My name is Wade Barnes, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Farmer's Edge. We believe the only way to understand value is to experience it yourself. Try our integrated data solutions with no commitments until May 2018. I know we can make a difference on your farm. Your data is your asset. Own it and use it.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
Hey, I'm Lisa Kelly. You might know me from history's Ice Road Truckers, but this summer, I'm looking for a change of scenery. We'll be visiting Love's travel stops in search of people who, like Dello, are game changers. I can't wait to meet as many of you as possible. Join me as I make my way across America with Chevron to get the word out about its game-changing, heavy-duty diesel engine oil, Dello 400, with Isosin advanced technology. We'll see you out there on the road all summer long with Chevron, Dello, and Love's.
And now we have Jenny in the field talking with Farmer Dave.
Dave, this corn has some noticeable differences. Tell us what's going on here.
Well, I know AgroLiquid had helped me out a lot last year, but I've been using my old fertilizer program for a long time. So I decided to do a comparison, AgroLiquid versus a conventional program. So far, the differences are pretty obvious.
Looks clear to me.
Absolutely. AgroLiquid is going to take the championship here.
Each year we get a lot of questions about how to fix low pH soil and the use of lime, so we'll get into some more details on that today.
Let's start by defining what a low pH soil is. When we look for a soil pH trying to grow corn and soybeans and wheat, we like to fall in that 6.3 to 6.8 range. So if we're shooting in that range, if we're below 6.3, that's what we're talking about having an excessively low soil pH that we may want to adjust and move up. If we happen to be somewhere in that ideal range, even if it's 6.3, you could say, well, 6.3 is acid, 7 is neutral. That's right, we want a slightly acid soil for most of the crops that we're going to raise. Now, there are certainly exceptions out there, but in corn and soybean and wheat country, that's what we're shooting for, 6.3 to 6.8.
Okay, so what is acidity? Basically, it's the excess of hydrogen ions. So if we're going to get rid of acidity, we've got to get rid of some of that hydrogen. How can we do that? Well, lime is the solution. What lime is calcium carbonate. By putting calcium carbonate out there, together with the hydrogen or the excess hydrogen that's in that low pH soil, you're going to end up with three things as the result. You'll have H2O, which is water, and that's obviously something plants need. You're going to have CO2, carbon dioxide. That is what plants breathe. And then you'll have leftover calcium, which plants also need. So basically three great things by putting lime out there and combining that in the low pH soil. When you do this, the soil pH will go up. It's a pretty simple formula, pretty easy to do, but there are different types of lime, and so we want to explain that just a little bit as well.
There are a couple primary types of lime that we'll look at. Now, Brian mentioned CaCO3 or calcium carbonate. That's right, that's what lime is, but really we've got calcitic lime that's very high in calcium and very low in magnesium. We also have dolomitic lime that's still high in calcium, but it also has a pretty good share of magnesium in it. Now, when we look at soil tests from around the country, in certain soils, we need both magnesium and calcium. Well, if we're in that position, dolomitic lime is a great solution. However, in other soils, like where we farm, we primarily just need the calcium. We've already got lots of magnesium out there. We want to choose a calcitic lime to keep that magnesium in balance.
So you do want to take a look at what type of lime you're going to buy. The other big thing in terms of dolomitic and calcitic is, what's the cost? We get a lot of questions about, well, should I get ag lime? Should I get water treatment lime? Should I get this calcitic lime or dolomitic lime you're talking about? Maybe I need Pell lime. Well, it does get kind of confusing. So here's what we would suggest you do. Take soil samples, send them into a lab. Also, take samples of the lime choices that you have and send those into the lab for analysis. That way you have data back, and also if you simply provide the lab with the costs of each one of the lime choices, they should be able to help you decipher which one of these lime materials is going to fit best for me, which one's going to be the most economical in my situation for my soils, and by the way, how many pounds of lime do I need to correct my pH?
Brian mentioned pelletized lime, and it's often at a price premium because it's easy to handle. The other reason that it's often at a price premium is it's highly available. And that's really what we're looking at with different lime sources is how quickly will it change my pH? Is it something that's going to take a long time to start working? Or is it something that I'm going to get some activity out of right now? You may have a source like water treatment plant lime. We use a lot of that on our farm, and that has the ability to change pH pretty quickly. Also, some sources of ag lime, if they're finely ground, can change that pH quickly as well. So make sure you understand that component of it too when you're picking out your lime source.
Well, what it really comes back to is the fineness of the lime. The smaller the particle, the quicker it's going to change pH, and in some cases, the more it's going to change pH. So again, rather than get into all the details of that today, we would just tell you, send your soil in and your lime sources or potential lime sources into the lab, have them tested, and then you can figure these things out very easily.
All right, now when we're talking about soil samples here, we're not talking about one sample for a 160-acre field. We're talking about samples for small zones within that field because you need to identify certain parts of the field that need the lime, and there may be other parts that don't. We get questions all the time about, well, I've got a pH of 7.5 in part of my ground, but my calcium is really low, and then I've got a pH of 6.0 in another part that I know I need to raise that pH, so I know I want to put lime on. What about in the high pH ground that still needs calcium?
Well, lime actually can be beneficial for high pH soils as well. If you can simply raise your calcium levels, you have better porosity in your soil, you have better calcium availability for the plant, and over time, you can start to change your soil overall and even lower your pH just a little bit. So certainly, we'd like to have tile in the ground first. That's going to help more than anything in those high pH soils to flush out salts and high magnesium, but adding some lime when you are very low in terms of calcium percentage in the soil can be beneficial even if your pH is high.
Lime is an important amendment that you could make to your soils if it calls for it, if the pH is below 6.3, if your calcium base saturation is below 65%. Those are great situations to add lime. One thing lime will not do for you though is control our weed of the week. We'll show you what will coming up later in the show.
We love the quality, we love the construction. We're looking forward to working with Morton in the future.
They have this down to a science. They know exactly what you want. They know how to make it happen. It's an easy process.
I would definitely recommend Morton. From the first time I met the salesman to the last nail that the crew put in, it has been a positive and professional experience.
I'm so happy I found Morton because they just make the job so easy.
Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com.
Being a farmer means securing your land and livelihood for the future. Harvest Solutions from Capello USA have the grit to get you there. Our product lines for corn, sunflowers, and forage are designed for efficiency and longevity, preventing harvest loss while minimizing maintenance and downtime. To do everything you can to advance your farmland to the next generation, call us at 855-CAPELLO or visit us at capellousa.com. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Hey, I'm Lisa Kelly. You might know me from history's Ice Road Truckers, but this summer, I'm looking for a change of scenery. We'll be visiting Love's travel stops in search of people who, like Dello, are game changers. I can't wait to meet as many of you as possible. Join me as I make my way across America with Chevron to get the word out about its game-changing heavy-duty diesel engine oil, Dello 400 with Isosin advanced technology. We'll see you out there on the road all summer long with Chevron, Dello, and Love's.
In life, when you put the max in, you get the max out. It's no different for your corn, which is why 40 years of effort have gone into proving that Instinct and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers do more than just stabilize nitrogen, they maximize nitrogen, so your corn gives you the max in return.
Looking to maximize your yield potential? MONSANTO BioAg can help with microbial seed applied solutions. Available for a wide variety of crops, they contain hard-working microbes that help your plants access key nutrients, enhance their root and shoot growth, and help them better withstand stress all season long, all of which add up to a higher yield potential for you. See how microbes can help you at monsantobioag.com/500trillion.
Over the last few years, we've had a lot of questions about wheat pre-emerge herbicides, and we have seen wheat pre-emerge herbicides get used on a lot more acres. I think this is incredibly important because as we're trying to prevent weed resistance, as we're trying to have great weed control and high yields, you can do it pretty cost effectively by using a pre. So we want to talk about your options today.
When you think about the crop of wheat, it's a grass crop. And what weeds are going to be the most difficult to control? Well, in most cases, it's the grasses. Now, depending on where you're at in the country, it could be a broadleaf, but let's start with the grasses to begin with. Oftentimes when we're looking at grass control for winter wheat, we're looking at cheatgrass as being a big concern. Now, moisture conditions in the fall are going to really play into this, and we often get the question, all right, well, I'm not going to have cheatgrass coming until I get some moisture here to get it to start. I fully understand that. I also understand that if you're using a pre-emerge herbicide, it may have some contact activity, but you're really relying on soil residual to control the later flushes of weeds, and to get that soil residual to start working, you do need some moisture as well.
All right, let's talk a little about product choices. What I always take a look at is what can I use as a grass herbicide in winter wheat, and unfortunately we're dealing with primarily ALS herbicides. The one I really like is Prepare, that allows me to save things like Outrider, PowerFlex, and Olympus for later on. When I mention Outrider, PowerFlex, and Olympus, those are traditionally the cheatgrass products, the downy brome products in winter wheat. Unfortunately, all of them have pretty long residual. PowerFlex has the least amount of residual, and Outrider would have the most amount of residual. So if we're in corn and soybean country and there's some winter wheat, we don't typically recommend using Olympus or Outrider just because of the long residual. But in true wheat country where that's about all that's raised, or maybe it's wheat fallow or continuous wheat, that's where Outrider and Olympus really have a nice fit because of their long residual. So anyway, I come back to Prepare. Why do I recommend Prepare? Because it's halfway decent on cheatgrass and a lot of other grasses, but it also has broadleaf activity. And it's very inexpensive. A lot of guys are using 0.2 ounces. You could use 0.3 ounces, the labeled rate. You're going to spend in the range of $3 to $6, something like that. So it doesn't cost a lot of money. You get a lot of weed control. Yes, it's not going to be perfect, but at least it's going to suppress a lot of different weeds.
One other soil residual herbicide that's starting to get talked about a little bit more is Zidua. Now, it's not a true pre that you're going to put it out and then plant wheat later, but it is one of those products that gives you a different group. It's a group 15 herbicide rather than a group 1 or a group 2 like Brian was talking about. And it's one that gives you some pretty good control on certain grass species. So if this one happens to fit into your rotation with Italian ryegrass or something like that being a problem weed, it could be something just to diversify your herbicide options that you're using in your field.
The big thing I'd stress here is you're not going to get 100% control out of any of these products we've mentioned so far. They're all going to help. They're all going to give you, hopefully, increased yield because of reduced weed competition, but don't expect they're going to be perfect, especially Prepare or even Zidua. Darren mentioned Italian ryegrass. Well, you're not going to kill Italian ryegrass with one shot of Zidua. No way. It's absolutely going to reduce the competition. It's going to kill some of the weeds, but it just won't be 100%. Nevertheless, we still think these are good investments in most cases, especially where you have medium to heavy weed pressure. You should see a lot better yield because early on, when that grass plant gets started, the wheat I'm talking about here, it needs no competition. That's when it really thrives. So if you have the pre-emerge herbicide out there with a product like Prepare, for example, you're just off to a lot better start, and hopefully this should all pay out in the end.
I've got two final points. So Brian mentioned if you haven't tried this before, here's situations you should try it. The other thing that I see many farmers doing is leaving some check strips where they don't have that pre-down just to see what it looks like. Unfortunately, many people leave those checks unintentionally. They go a little wide with the sprayer, or they miss a little spot in the field for whatever reason, and you see that. If you do leave a few check strips, it's probably the only time you'll ever do it, and you'll wonder, why did I leave such a big check strip? Because I have a lot of weeds to clean up. The other thing is, if you have broadleaf weeds, while these ALS type products and even the Group 15 Zidua, they do have some activity on broadleaves. You'll get a lot more activity out of broadleaves with Sharpen. Now, Sharpen doesn't have grass activity, but if you've got, say, Roundup resistant kochia, or you've got a number of winter annual broadleaf weeds out there, Sharpen could be a great option for you. It has awesome burn down activity, and it has residual for broadleaf weeds.
Darren mentioned the burn down out of Sharpen, Prepare, and most of these other products have burn down as well. Zidua does not, though. But the big thing I'd stress here is make sure you start clean. Whether it's with tillage or a herbicide, start clean. Get your weed off to a good start in the beginning.
Tillage may not be the solution for our weed of the week. We'll tell you what is coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our Weed of the Week is known by many names, and we hear about it all over the country. It is scouring rush.
With scouring rush, it's probably the weed we get the most questions about at Ag PhD because it's one of the toughest ones to kill. It doesn't have leaves like a normal plant, so how are you going to stick herbicide on there? It's very challenging. And I go back to even when I was a kid, there was a railroad company that was talking to my dad about, well, what herbicide should we use to kill this scouring rush? So they tried high rates of atrazine, high rates of Roundup, high rates of 2,4-D. None of that stuff worked. And we were just asking the railroad company too, why do you really care? You're the railroad, so you don't kill a few weeds. It's no big deal. And they said, well, here's the problem. With scouring rush, if it gets on the tracks, our train can't stop. The train keeps sliding. Well, that's not a good thing for a train. Well, eventually what they figured out is Gramoxone or Paraquat would control scouring rush.
Well, scouring rush a lot of times pops up where it's wet. So if you improve drainage by installing subsurface drainage tile or narrowing up your tile spacings, you can oftentimes get rid of scouring rush. We see tillage sometimes being a problem because it ends up getting dragged all over in the field. So you could actually spread the weed problem by doing tillage. So we really like the herbicide solution if at all possible, and then assist that by getting better drainage.
Yeah, the drainage thing I think is important because as a cultural practice, we just want great crop canopy, and then that can choke out the scouring rush. But just keep in mind, it's a perennial weed, it is hard to control. We don't have any good answer for you in any existing crop other than use Gramoxone as a burn down pre or post harvest.
That's all time for this week's Weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Take a look inside any rotary combine and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the Axial Flow Combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
And now we have Jenny in the field talking with Farmer Dave.
Dave, how is your season shaping up?
Well, I used the starting lineup that my AgroLiquid coach suggested in furrow, and the plants jumped right out of the ground. We had some wind damage here, but I called my AgroLiquid rep. He came out and suggested a foliar application of Fertirain. It perked right up.
So you're feeling good about finishing out this season?
Absolutely. AgroLiquid is my championship team.
Thanks, Dave.
In today's market, growers deserve products that bring true, measurable value to their farm. My name is Wade Barnes, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Farmer's Edge. We believe the only way to understand value is to experience it yourself. Try our integrated data solutions with no commitments until May 2018. I know we can make a difference on your farm. Your data is your asset. Own it and use it.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
If you're in strip till, where should you put next year's rows? I'll share what we do on our farm in today's Iron Talk. When you're doing strip till in the fall, you completely set the table for next year's crop. Fertility is placed in a deep band, your seed bed is prepped, the location of next year's rows of crop is also set. Three of the bigger benefits of strip tillage as we see it are, number one, reducing tillage reduces potential erosion. Number two, deep placing fertilizer keeps the fertilizer safe from tie-up in spring rains. It's also more available to the crop when the summer gets hot and dry, as we saw this year. This is especially true now for phosphorus, which enters the root system largely by diffusion, moving from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Third, leaving this year's root mass intact helps build organic matter in the soil faster. Don't forget, about half of the plant mass in your fields is below ground. Plus, this is the portion of plant residue that's most likely to turn into organic matter in the future. For these reasons, in our 30-inch rows, we simply move over about 15 inches and build next year's strips in the fall. Leaving residue like corn stalks standing helps keep our crop residues in the field and greatly reduces any chance for soil erosion by wind and rain. With our chopping corn heads, we shoot for corn stalks at about 18 inches tall rather than cutting them close to the ground. This is the key factor for us that's significantly reducing those plant residues blowing away. Now, by going in between the rows, moving over 15 inches in our 30-inch rows, and leaving that root mass intact, we also eliminate the problem of what to do with root balls on the surface, and it gives us a chance to till through where any compaction was created by wheel tracks in this year's crop. Other farmers may utilize a different strategy to meet the needs of their cropping system. For us, we like to build our strips for next year's rows about halfway in between this year's rows for a variety of reasons. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
That's our time for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You can catch us on SiriusXM Channel 147, the Rural Radio Channel, at 2 p.m. Central each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
A healthy soil helps to keep our air and water clean while providing a medium for productive crops, pastures, and shelter belts. It takes good management practices and care to accomplish this. To learn more about how farmers are improving the health of their soils, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.